y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrum, and I am back with another video. So today I am here to talk about all of the series that I have finished, which is super crazy because, as you all know, I made a video where I was like, I need to complete all these series, and it was so many series on that list. But I am happy to say, according to my list, I actually have finished 28 series, and these are books that I have kept track of since 2014. So if I've completed series prior to 2014, I don't know. I don't remember, because that's when I first joined Goodreads, and that is the most accurate way for me to go back and double check stuff. But for the most part, I think this is going to be the most accurate picture of the series that I have completed. Now, there is one series that I have completed, so technically it's 29, but for a lot of reasons, I'm just not going to include that series on this list. I'm sure everyone knows what it is, so just go ahead and mark that off. Please do not ask me in the comments, oh, you haven't finished this series by this person who we shall not name. Yeah, I have. I have a lot of feelings about that right now, so I just don't want to talk about it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump in. And the first the first series on my list that I have completed is the Twilight. It was the Twilight Saga. I mean, I don't know what you call it now. It could still be the Twilight Saga. But yes, I have read all of the books for these series. I'm not going to count anything extra like novellas or graphic adaptations or anything like that, just because I look at the series being like the primary works. So I know that novellas are a great way to pull people more into the world. I read novellas that are part of series. There's a series on here where I've literally have read everything that is related to the series, but I definitely think that just finishing the main books, the streamlined books, are the ones that I'm going to talk about here. So technically, yes, I have finished the Twilight Saga, which includes Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn, and Midnight Sun. And I'm not going to even talk about what Twilight's about, because we all know what Twilight's about. We all know how I feel about Twilight. I have a review. Y'all know. The next series that I have completed is the Dorothy Must Die series by Daniel Page. I was a huge fan of this series. It is a retelling of The Wizard of Oz, and in this reimagining, Dorothy is actually evil, and we meet another young lady that travels to Oz to kind of help them out. And this is really about not taking things at face value, because everything that was good in the original works is evil, and everything that was evil is actually good. So it's really interesting twist. I think that it started off really, really strong, and it kind of dwindled out to not being so good towards the end. But I did read everything, which includes Dorothy Must Die, The Wicked Will Rise, Yellow Brick War, The End of Oz, Dorothy Must Die Stories Volume 1, Dorothy Must Die Stories Volume 2, and Dorothy Must Die Stories Volume 3. The next one that I have on this list is one that I recently just finished, and this is the Booze and Booze series, which is a series done by a group of Black indie romance writers. And when I say Booze and Booze, it's BOOS and BOOZE, which is one that I really did enjoy as a whole. The books that are included in the series include Costume Cuddy by Shanicia C. Higgins, The Wrong Wicker by Ashley Nicole, The Stroke of Midnight by Diana W., Halloween Spice by Turtleberry, Eerie Obsession by T. Key, and Brewing Storm by D. Rose. So of course this is a joint collaboration where all of these books take place in the same town. They focus on this Halloween party that happens in this town, and each book looks at the romance between two different characters, and they all have their different spin and vibe to them, which I really did end up enjoying. Like I said, as a whole, some were better than others in terms of writing and actual plot and storyline, but for the most part it was a good series. The next series that I finished was the Book Boyfriend series by Claire Kingsley, and this one is interesting because of the fact that it started off as like a series that was catered to looking at people who were involved in books in some way, whether that was reading or publishing or writing or whatever the case may be. But that theme kind of fell apart a little bit towards the end of the series, but it was generally like a 3-star series. There is a novella. I didn't read the novella, but I did read the 3 primary books, and those books are Book boyfriend, cocky roommate, and hot single dad. The next series that I read was also another series written by a group of Black indie romance writers, and this one was published, I believe, in around March of this year. This was a little bit after we found out about COVID, and it all takes place on this cruise ship where people end up getting stuck on this cruise ship because of the fact that COVID happens, and we get to meet a lot of different couples. I think there's about 8 or 9 books in this series. It's 8 books, and I really did enjoy this series as a whole as well. Of course, being a kind of foray of different books, you get some that are better than others, but as a whole I did generally find it interesting. And the books in this series include Love on the Luminous by Shanicia C. Higgins, Love on Deck by Ashley Nicole, Love Overboard by D. Rose, Love on Cruise Control by T. Key, Love Unexpected by Turtleberry, Love's False Start by Diana W., Love Lessons by Honesty Price, and Love Under Quarantine by Nicole Falls. The next series that I have is one that I read when I was a kid, and I just remember reading this entire series pre-Goodreads, but also I was rereading some of them during the time in which I got on Goodreads, and that is the series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I'm sure that everyone knows what the series is about. Of course, I think that these books technically just start off like really strong, and then I think some of the themes become a little bit redundant as you get into the later books, but for the most part, like, I really enjoy them. They're very dark and grim, but also extremely entertaining, and I just, as a whole, I remember as a kid enjoying it. I'd be interested in seeing like my thoughts as an adult by rereading them and seeing if my thoughts have changed and seeing like exactly how repetitive these themes are, but of course they always have a interesting place in my childhood. So the series of Unfortunate Events includes The Bad Beginning, The Wide Window, The Miserable Mill, The Austere Academy, The Ersatz Elevator, The Vile Village, The Hostile Hospital, The Carnivorous Carnival, The Slippery Slope, The Grim Grotto, The Penultimate Peril, and The End. After that, I have the After Hours series written by Ava Freeman. This is one literally that I just finished in the month of November, and this is a more of a companion series because you don't really see appearances of any characters in, you know, subsequent or previous books or anything like that. They're not really interconnected. They're connected by theme, so they all take place in workplace environments. They're all sapphic romances, and they all feature very powerful Black women, which was definitely a plus for me. I really enjoyed the series. The last book in the series just was really hard for me because of the editing, but as of the time that I'm recording this video, Ava Freeman actually has reached out to me and has told me that there actually has been a further edited version of the book, and I think that I ended up getting an older version of the book, and they have since updated that version, so that's great to hear. That is so great to hear. I'm so excited for that. I'm super excited for that, and I am hoping that I will have the opportunity to work with her in the future in terms of reading some more of her books. So the After Hours series includes the books 4-Letter Word, Fire We Mate, and Belong to You. And there is a novella that I have not read, but like I said, I've read the main books in the series. The next series that I have is the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. I think that everyone is pretty much familiar with this, especially because Netflix has made an adaptation. These were some of the first YA contemporary books that I read, and I absolutely fell in love with them. So the series includes To All the Boys I Loved Before, P.S. I Still Love You, and then Always and Forever Laura Jean. And of course this starts off when Laura Jean writes letters to previous loves and they get mailed off, and then drama ensues from there. And I also read another Jenny Han series, which I believe is the Summer trilogy, and that includes The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer. This is kind of like a contemporary romance series that features a young girl who actually ends up like growing up from the middle school kid that these two boys knew, and she actually ends up falling in love with both of them, and she has to make a decision about who she wants to be with. I really enjoyed these when I read them. It's been a while since I read them. I actually need to do a reread, but I did end up finishing this trilogy. The next series that I have is called the Hamilton High series, and that's by Cody Keplinger, and this series actually is a quartet of companion books, and they're companions because characters come into play in different books. Although they're not main characters, they end up being side characters, and they all take place at the same high school, which is why it's called the Hamilton High series. And the first book in the series is actually the Duff, which is the designated ugly fat friend. The next one is Shutout, which I have a copy of, but I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, it's actually in my car. The next one is A Midsummer's Nightmare, and the fourth one is Lying Out Loud. So I have read all four of these. They all have different plot lines. I'm very curious of what my thoughts will be going into this series again, because I originally read The Duff in I believe 14 or 2013. I think it was 2014. Yeah, it was 2014. And I reread it last year in 2019, so 5 years later, and I ended up giving it 2 stars when I reread it. So, and as you can see, like, I really annotated this one, so I'll be interested in rereading the rest of the series and seeing if my thoughts kind of remain the same. So the next series that I finish is part of a series that I talked about in October, and it is the Addicted series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. Like I said, I've talked about this one a lot, and it is a series that I actually have read now for a second time starting this year. And I know that there's the Calloway Sister series, but technically I haven't finished that series, so I'm not going to include it in this, but I have read the first part of this whole entire world, which is its own series, which you can read independently, but it's kind of best if you don't, but you can read it independently. And that series includes Addicted to You, Ricochet, Addicted for Now, Thrive, and Addicted After All. And of course, the Addicted series is about Lily and Lo, who are both struggling with their own addictions. Lily has a sex addiction, and Lo struggles with alcoholism, and it is their journey of overcoming their addictions and being in a relationship together and not enabling each other. And it's a part of a bigger conversation that happens, like I said, with the Calloway Sister series, but it is a good series, definitely a good series. The next series that I read is actually a middle grade graphic novel series, and this is by Shannon Hale, and she wrote the Real Friends series, the first book in the series being Real Friends, and the second book in the series being Best Friends. And these books basically are an illustrated storyline of what it's like to be in middle school when you make friends and you lose friends and you have best friends that you kind of drift away from. And I think that is just a great insight to those friendly relationships that we have as kids and how we grow into them and then grow out of them. And I absolutely love both books in the series. I don't know if she's coming out with any more, but as of right now, I don't see any publication notices for any future books. So I'm going to consider that these 2 books are the final aspects of the series, although I could be wrong. The next series that I read was the LA Candy series by Lauren Conrad. Don't ask me why. I think I just was like looking for something to read, and I found the audiobooks. This was like 4 years ago, and I found them through my library's website, and I was just like, okay, I didn't realize that Lauren Conrad had even written a YA contemporary trilogy. And honestly, LA Candy is basically a fictitious version of what happened on the hills. Let's just keep it honest. It is not anything new. It's not anything inventive. It's like a solid 3-star read, but it is all about the same things that happened on the hills. I can't see her not basing it off of the hills. And this series includes LA Candy, Sweet Little Lies, and Sugar and Spice. The next series that I finished is a YA classic series in terms of like paranormal, when paranormal was a big thing in the YA industry, like 2012, 2013, and that is the Castor Chronicles by Margaret Stoll and Kami Garcia. This is about a group of individuals that are casters, not exactly witches, but kind of like it, and it is about these two young people. I think it's Lana and I forgot the guy's name. Just being honest, I forgot his name. Ethan. That's his name. His name is Ethan. And it is about him helping her work through her powers. That way she becomes a light caster and not a dark caster, and kind of examining the differences between light casters and dark casters. And it's really cool because this actually takes place in South Carolina, and for the most part, I mean, it is a series of its time. It was interesting for its time. It is kind of like a southern fantasy paranormal type of book. Would it probably hold up in 2020? I don't think so, but from when I was reading it, I did enjoy the 4 books in the series. It does have a spin-off series that I didn't read, but I read the initial series. And those books include Beautiful Creatures, Beautiful Darkness, Beautiful Chaos, and Beautiful Redemption. Of course, I wouldn't be a true fan of Percy if I didn't include Percy on this list. So the first Percy Jackson series that I completed was Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and that includes the Lightning Thief, Sea of Monsters, the Titan's Curse, the Battle of the Labyrinth, and the Last Olympian. At this point, I'm sure everybody knows what Percy Jackson and the Olympians is about, so I won't even waste your time explaining it, but if you haven't read it, I need you to read it. And of course, I read Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus, and this is a spin-off of the first series, and it includes our characters from the first series and more dynamic characters in this second part of the series. I definitely would not recommend reading this series without reading the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series first. And these books include The Lost Hero, The Son of Neptune, The Mark of Athena, The House of Hades, which is the best book in the entire series, and The Blood of Olympus. Next, I read another classic YA dystopian trilogy that everyone was reading, that I think everyone hates at this point, and that is the Divergent trilogy by Veronica Raw. This includes Divergent, Insurgents, and Allegiance, and everybody hates the way Allegiant ended, but this essentially is about a society that has now divided into factions, and these factions are based on certain personality traits, and there is some conversation about people who don't fit into any faction and they're considered to be divergent, and it kind of goes from there. The movies weren't even finished. I think that everyone thinks that this is a series of its time, and I don't think anybody's trying to reread it at this point. I got rid of my books, so yeah, I did own them at one point, but I don't own them anymore. And I loved them when they came out. You know, I didn't like Allegiant, but I did like Divergent and Insurgent. I also read another YA sweetheart when booktube was first getting started, and that is the If I Stay duology by Gail Forman, and the books in this series include If I Stay and Where She Went. And this series, I think, was the first one was adapted into a movie, and it is about a young girl who gets into a accident with her family, and she's kind of caught in between worlds, whether she decides if she wants to go or if she wants to stay, and facing the fact that if she does stay, that she's gonna have to deal with the pain of losing her family. And it is a very powerful book from what I remember. I think that I may need to do like a vlog of like me rereading, you know, like 2013 YA books, because listen, I wonder if a lot of these books will hold up now if we were to read them. So that may be a project coming to you soon. The next one that I did finish, I'm not going to talk about too much because I actually have done a full review on it, and it is the Paper Girl series by Brian K. Vaughan. So like I said, I read all 6 volumes this year. I'm not going to talk about it much because I have done a full review, and I will link that review up in the card symbols above for you to check out. Another graphic novel series that I have read is the March series by John Lewis. So of course that's 3 volumes of it, and I really enjoy this series. It is a close examination of the civil rights movement and John Lewis's experience in being a part of the civil rights movement. If you want to know more about John Lewis or just more about his activism during the civil rights movement, I definitely would check out these 3 graphic novels. I also read another graphic novel series, which is the Aya series, and I read them in 2 omnibuses, and the first one is Aya Life in Yop City, And the second one was I Love in Yop City. And this is a very interesting graphic novel series because it's loosely based off of the author's time in Yop City, and I think that it gives a new and refreshing perspective of this city, and I absolutely love this. This is one that I do need to reread very, very soon, and it's so good. If you've never heard of it or if you never read it, I definitely would recommend checking it out. So the next series that I finished is actually a manga, and it is Komomo Confessory, and this was, I think, 6 volumes long, which is not super long at all, by Maki Minami. And this is about a young girl who is wealthy, and she, I think, is really mean to this guy named Natsu. I'm trying to remember the specifics of it. And then she loses all of her fortune, and then she has to end up working for Natsu when she goes asking for his help, and he agrees to help her as long as she works for him. And it's just a cute kind of like romance, and it was a quick read, and I really enjoyed it. And it was available at my library when it came out, and I just was like, oh, I'm just gonna read all 6 volumes of it, and I did, and it was well worth the read. I also read the Masterminds trilogy by Gordon Corman, who writes a lot of great middle grade and children's books. And this is a science fiction middle grade series that is about these kids that live in this town, and they can't leave the town, and when they leave the town, some weird things happen to them, and they don't know why, and then you as a reader find out why. And it is so good and so strange and nothing that you would ever expect. And I really enjoyed this one. I would recommend listening to Masterminds on audio because it is a full cast audio. And in this trilogy, there is Masterminds, Criminal Destiny, and Payback. I also read the comic book series Gotham Academy, and there's Gotham Academy and then there's Gotham Academy second semester, and this takes place in the city of Gotham and of course at an academy, and it focuses on this young girl who has this dark past in relation to her mother, and she can't really figure out what it is, and I don't think she has a really good relationship with Batman. This wasn't really my favorite comic book series coming from DC. I wanted a lot more, and I felt like the second semester was not good at all, but it was one that I just followed through, and I ended up reading all of the volumes in both because I think the second semester is just a spin-off of the original series. I also finished the comic book series Lady Killer. There hasn't been any word that any other volumes of this are going to come out, so I'm going to consider the 2 volumes to be all that there is going to be to the series, and this is by Joelle Jones, and this is very interesting. It's about a 1950s housewife that's an assassin. It's pretty freaking cool. It is so dark and gritty and violent, but it is so well done because I think that the premise, the fact that you have this 1950s housewife who's like an assassin when her husband leaves, and like she can kill someone in her house and have everything cleaned up by the time that her husband gets home. So she's like living this double life. That's really, really intriguing. I love both volumes. I hope that this isn't completed and that someday we do get a 3rd volume, but it's been years and I don't think that it's gonna happen. Okay, the next one that I have is a contemporary romance, and it is the Naughty Princess Club, and this is by Tara Sivek, and this is a reimagining of some princesses from Disney. So it focuses on Cinderella, Belle, and then Ariel, and this is definitely a adult an adult version of them. I mean, it's cute in the sense that all these 3 women like are having trouble finding love. I think that a couple of them are divorcees and they're trying to find their own, so they actually want to start a stripping business, a strip club, and they are trying to figure out how to do it. And there's 3 books, and they each are told from the perspective of one of the princesses, and of course they all find love. I thought they were really cute. The audiobooks were amazing. Absolutely love the audiobooks, and I read these pretty close together. That's how I know I really enjoyed it, because I kind of binged all 3 books. And the books are At the Stroke of Midnight, In Bed with the Beast, and Kiss the Girl. So the last one on my list, I actually made a mistake. I said it was 29. If I took the one off that I didn't want to mention, it would have been 28, but it's really 27 because I wrote one series down twice. So this is the last one that I have on my list, and this is the Hex Hall series by Rachel Hawkins. I think that Rachel Hawkins has done a lot of other series that have become more popular in the booktube community in the past couple years, but this is one that was popular a while ago, like in 2013 and 2014. So we're talking about 6-7 years ago. And this is a paranormal series about a young girl that is attending this school, and she's a witch, and there are some strange things that happen. I mean, just regular everyday things that you would expect to take place in a high school setting. And I remember enjoying them. I don't really remember the specifics of a lot of these books because I read them so long ago. Like, I think I started these in 2014, so I read these 6 years ago. But I do know that I binged the series, so that's usually an indication that I really was enjoying it. And my reviews too, I rated them pretty high. So the books in this series include Hex Hall, Demon Glass, and Spellbound. There is a spinoff called School Spirits that I believe is following someone else, but it's not a part of the main series, so I don't include it. So I just say like those 3 books are part of the series that I did complete. All right, y'all, so that's it. Those are the series that I have completed. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I'm happy to say that I actually have finished some series in the past 6 years or so, so that makes me feel so much better about life. Considering I had that video where I was listening to all the series that I have not finished, it's good to be like, oh, well, I have some series that I actually have finished. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. List down in the comments below some series that you have completed. Have you read any of these series? Are you interested in any of these series? And I'll be back with another video soon.